gung-ho about. I'm not paying for it like to be advertised out there or do anything like that. Just spread it by word of mouth, and eventually I'll have enough people.
Yep, I think that's right.
Be spreading the word that it'll start. And then I've got a couple of ideas for another project too, where I want to start doing. I guess I'll announce it here since we're recording already, and I'll go ahead and. I'm working on I'm putting together doing a live stream as well every week in conjunction with this to kind of build off of the two and do some shorter versions of things and do some local stories and that kind of stuff. And
it sure seems like the thing that would amplify
cover some real estate stuff. But anyway, thanks for coming in on such short notice.
Thanks for having me.
I know it's been a couple crazy weeks for you.
Yes, it's been a busy 2025 and we're only 3 weeks in.
I know, right? I got to see you at the some big updates in regards to the Lazy S Meadows.
Yep.
We had the public hearing
on Planning Board and Zoning Commission.
Yes.
On January 6th. So that was our first formal public hearing and went well. Both entities unanimously recommended to the city council that they approve the project.
Awesome.
So that was really good to see. And they had some really good questions. There were a fair number of people there as well, as you saw, and they had some comments as well. So I thought it was a good discussion, and we were pleased with the outcome.
Yeah, I thought it went very well. I was really curious to see how people would react to everything. I was actually I would bet there would have been a little more concern from the community just because of the way things are around here, right?
Sure.
So I was expecting a little more pushback, but from the people that were there was more questions just on clarification of certain things, and definitely no resistance of this shouldn't happen. And I think that's that really shows the work that you guys have put into it, and the commitment that you're making to really build a community rather than just a place for houses to be built.
Yeah.
Right? To actually have this cohesive environment between living and working and walking paths and create an actual environment where people can have a community and interact with each other and interact with their surroundings and not feel that it's just like, oh, this is my 1 acre plot and this is my house and I have to deal with an HOA.
Yeah, that's true. And I hope that feeling is what led to that level of good, participation at the Planning Board and Zoning Commission. And in general, too, we've tried to be really transparent since we first proposed the project in February of 2024. Mm-hmm. And we did a public meeting, as you know, at that time at the Grange. Yep. And we also did that one online so you could participate virtually. And we had a good participation in both those avenues, both in person and the online component. And we had I thought that was quite robust discussion about this because it is a big project for Hamilton.
It is, yeah.
We're talking about just over 200 living units that would be in this project, spread out in about 115 lots on 26 acres at the corner, northwest corner of Fairgrounds and Eastside Highway. That's pretty much right in town. So we expected and really planned for a good, robust discussion, and we've had it at every venue. We were on your podcast here in June.
Yep.
I was, and then we've had lots of informal meetings with a lot of different stakeholders as well, from the employers to the building industry to the biomimicry work got a lot of attention, and we've had a lot of discussions with folks about the impact that this project may have on the natural environment and what we're doing to deal with that. So it's been a good discussion. We've been glad to have it, and we think that bodes well. We hope it bodes well for the city council, which is meeting tomorrow night,
Yep, tomorrow night at 7
7 p.m.
at the City Council building, also known as the Bedford Building
That's
here in
right.
Hamilton.
Yep.
I encourage anybody who's curious about the project to definitely attend that meeting. I know it's kind of short notice for everybody out there. We had intended to do this podcast
Yes, we
at the
did.
beginning of the year, but
Yeah.
I got quite ill for a little while there, so I didn't want to
Yeah.
spread it around. So we postponed it, and then
And I was out of town for a little bit.
you
too,
got to
so-
go on vacation and
Yep.
take a little break, which
Yep,
was
that's right.
well deserved, I'm
Yep,
sure. So glad we're able to slip this in right now. So tomorrow night, January 21st, 7 p.m. at the Bedford Building.
That's right.
And like I said, I encourage anybody who's really curious about this to go and listen to what City Council has to say about it, listen to what any members, I'm sure members of the Planning Board
Yep.
and Zoning Commission will be there.
The way it'll work tomorrow night is much like it did at the previous meeting, is the city planner will make a presentation to the city council that will review not only their own recommendations about the project,
Mhm.
but the planning board and zoning commission recommendations as well. We'll have a chance to introduce our project. Members of the public will have a chance to speak to it, and then the city council will deliberate and decide what to do about it. Assuming they come to a decision tomorrow night, which is one of the options for them, in 2 weeks they will address it again, just to make sure that they capture anybody in the public that wants to talk about it and wasn't able to.
Is that one scheduled too?
It
already?
is. It's on February 4th, so 2 weeks from
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay, so if you don't make the one tomorrow night,
Yeah.
February 4th, same location, same time, I assume?
I think the second meeting is, depending on what happens tomorrow night, will be less detailed than the first meeting.
Okay.
But nevertheless, they do allow public comment at both of them.
And you can still attend by Zoom, right, if you can't
You
make
can
it?
attend
Okay.
by Zoom, and you can look under the City of Hamilton website, City Council Agenda, and under 2025, you'll see this meeting, and you can get the Zoom instructions within there.
Perfect, there you go.
Yeah, it's good. We've seen pretty good participation in the meetings that we've been a part of at the city on that Zoom opportunity. So
Yeah, good.
It seems quite functional.
Yeah, it's a good, I mean, especially this time of year when
Yeah.
people might not have the inclination to go out so late, which is
Yep.
understandable, you know.
Yep.
You don't want to
Yeah.
be driving around.
Yeah, it could be I don't know how long it will go, but starts at 7. But they have a full agenda. This is just one item on it,
Right.
so it could go pretty late. And if your road is an ice rink, you might not.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
might not be so inclined to
Yeah.
drive out at night in the dark.
Well, let's go back to the project itself. I mean, you said this is, I mean, it's quite an ambitious project for Hamilton, and not ambitious and also unique. And I think it's also pretty unique here in Montana. I'm not really aware of. Well, I mean, I think you guys are the first ones to really approach biomimicry.
Actually in the world.
Really in the wow.
In the
Okay,
world. It
so this
an
is a
unprecedented thing, and we really value that part of the project because biomimicry was started by a Valley resident.
yes.
Janine Benyas, who lives up in Stevensville, and
Mhm.
she's just really had some deep, good thinking about how do we understand and address the impacts that humans have on our environment. And we were trying to deal with that, in understanding what we were doing with this project too. And she's been at this for 25 years. She's world renowned for that work. But we went and pitched them on the idea that, look, you apply these principles of understanding what's going on the ground and what the changes might mean for the natural environment. You apply that to factories and big government institutions and sort of these like NASA is a client of
Right,
theirs,
yeah.
and Google and so forth. And we're like, but one of the big things about habitat loss comes from the small projects that come in, the dividing up that habitat in small increments, and subdivisions are a big part of that.
Mhm.
And so what if we bring you on to help us understand and deal with the impacts that our proposal would have on the environment? And they said, yeah, that's great. We'd love to do something in the Bitterroot. And so we've been working with them since last year on that. And so in our project, we have, about, as I mentioned earlier, 26 acres is the focus of this proposal. And we're keeping a fair amount of that in open space. And they've helped us to design the open space and the stormwater attributes of what you get when you develop a property in a way that increases their chances for improving water quality and water, protecting water quality, dealing with biodiversity,
Right.
and all the elements that make for a good, intact environment. So we're pretty glad about that.
Yeah, for example, like using that bioswale at the edge of the
Yes.
property instead
Instead
of a storm
Yeah, instead
drain
of just
system.
curb and gutter and into
Yeah.
a sump, which sends it directly into the groundwater, including with the pollutants into that groundwater potentially, whether that's runoff from a road or
Mm-hmm.
anything else that might happen. And if you have what's called, as you mentioned, a bioswale, it actually has a filtering function when that stormwater goes into it before it gets to the groundwater.
Right, right.
And also can be good for plants on the surface, right? Because you could have pollinators and insects and,
Yep.
and even mammals that would live in that habitat and help offset some of the impact of the pavement that you're putting down for
Right.
the roads that are in the development.
Yeah, instead of just covering something with cement or blacktop
Yeah.
or even, Kentucky bluegrass or whatever.
Yep, that's right.
Whatever non-native plant life you decide
Yeah.
to put down on top of everything that
Yep.
more or less decimates the environment.
And they really follow through on an ethic that we really take to heart at the Bitterroot Stock Farm. This project is something that is on Bitterroot Stock Farm land, and my wife and her two sisters, who are the owners of the Bitterroot Stock Farm, are the fifth generation
Mm-hmm.
that are running it. And we've always had a real concern both for the community and for the land that we manage. And having those values come into this project was really important to them, and this is one way that we were able to honor that in a concrete way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bad pun.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's that's not an approach that's taken very often when it comes to that conversion of former ranch land to a residential development. Usually, it's just they sell it off to somebody, and then whoever ends up buying it develops it,
Deals with all of these
in a
issues.
sense. Yeah, develops it, and just does it from the aspect of the most financial gain. They only look at the numbers. And not to say that that's not a factor for you guys. Obviously, that's
it is
one
certainly an important goal.
one of the parts. I mean, it's
Yep.
you're making this investment, but you're also you need to bring in some income from it as well.
Yep.
You want to. That's the American way. It's
Yep.
the dream, right? But there's also a responsibility factor. I think that a lot more people can apply to these things to make sure that it's done in a way that will positively impact the community.
We totally recognize that the Bitterroot Stock Farm is closely tied to Hamilton.
Mhm.
If you look at the map, both the property that we're proposing this development on and our ranch writ large, we're pretty much right in town.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
and you could do this that way because you're technically in county,
Yeah,
and so
That's
you
right.
wouldn't have to. You didn't have
That's
to go through
correct.
all these
Yep.
loopholes, or not
Yeah.
loopholes, or these this red tape,
Yep.
quote unquote, and all of these different steps, because you are not beholden to the city of Hamilton, but this is a willing step in order to make things a little more, to tie it into the community and bring a little more infrastructure to the area as well that
Yeah.
would be beneficial to it.
As this generation has been running the ranch, we've seen a lot of change. Everyone in town knows the kind of growth that we've experienced leading up to the pandemic, and then even more so
Yeah, the
during
explosion
pandemic.
afterwards.
And that's just tough to see our friends and neighbors living in substandard housing, even RVs
Yeah.
for people you can see out just outside of town, how many people are living that. And it just seems like, we need to get on top of this as a community. You can develop in the county, but you're going to be using water wells and septic systems that threaten groundwater quality and quantity. There's a much easier way to manage that through the city wastewater system, which has capacity to deal with a subdivision like
Mhm.
ours. And there's just, when you're that close to town, an ability, we thought, to design something that could be part of the community and include that walkable, livable neighborhood
Yeah.
component to it that can really make it nice for the people that live there. You know, you could rent a decent place, maybe buy a place. You could be within easy range of your kid's school or maybe your job if you're working in town. One of the major employers, they're all pretty close by.
Yep. Yep.
You know, all these things, when we looked at the map and we saw the growth that was happening. You know, another thing that happened with us, Ryan, that people have noticed is that there is a sewer line going right through our grain, what we call the grain paved field now. And that goes from Fairgrounds Road over to the airport. And that was something that the county has proposed doing and constructed. It was about a $5 million project.
Wow.
And they proposed it because the airport has been challenged by its septic system. There's a lot of hangars there. There's the Hangar Cafe. There are a few businesses there. And the intensity of the development there was overpowering the ability of their septic systems to actually filter out the waste and protect the groundwater there. So when the county came to us and said, hey, we want to solve this problem, the city has agreed to hook that area up to the city wastewater. We have a couple of options. We can do it. If you'll allow us to go through your field, it's going to be a gravity-fed sewer system, and that's going to cost, I don't remember what the original estimate was. I'm sure it was less than 5, but to do it otherwise would require a pump station and to rerouting it probably over Mockingbird Hill or in some other way that, again, would need a pump station, and that has an exponential increase in cost.
Yeah, a pump station and then a large drain field as well, which is going to take up a lot of space and make that section of land basically unusable.
Yeah. So we were favorably disposed toward that because if the pollution did continue at the airport, it flows toward the river.
Yeah,
and
true.
That we love our river, and we were happy to help protect it. But also between the river and the airport is our ranch. You know, we do irrigate and
absolutely.
You know, that water is important to our operations as well. So we were happy to do that. And at the same time, what the county had looked at, and this has been going on for close to 20 years as well, is the intersection of Eastside Highway and Fairgrounds Road has been one of the more concerning intersections in the whole county.
Yes.
And if anybody is trying to take a left out of Fairgrounds Road to go north on the Eastside Highway, they know that feeling in their gut, like looking to the right, it's coming over the hill.
Over that
hill. Are they
hill.
coming over at 50 miles an hour, at 60 miles an hour? How quickly can I get out there? And we have seen a lot of accidents, many of which end up with cars in our field, knocking through the fence, and then our cattle get up on the highway, and there we go. So when they said they were going to do the sewer there, they also asked for a road easement, and we agreed to that, even though that's not currently on the schedule for actual construction yet, but it's in the planning phases. The city has gotten a grant to help design that whole thing, and we saw, you know, again, the traffic, pollution, growth issues in town with the lack of housing, and we're like, okay, the infrastructure's here. Town is growing right through our property. It makes a lot of sense to agree to that. Let's see, you know, if the best use of this portion, this southeast portion of our ranch, 26 acres, right across the road from the high school, it seems like the best use of that is to deal with the housing issue in a way that won't, you know, will have a manageable impact on traffic, we think. You know, we'll address the pollution issue through the wastewater and have the design elements that we think make for a really livable community that could offer a lot of different price points for people coming in, whether it's for rent, you know, these units, and as I mentioned, there'll be about 212 different units. It'll be about 115 different lots, different saleable lots, and some of them will be multiplexes with small mansion apartments, which is a type of building that has 6 units on the inside, and on the outside looks like a single-family house. Larger mansion apartments would have 7 units. We have 4plexes and 5plexes as well. And then we have townhomes, and we have what's called a muse area in the second and third phases of the development. And those are basically, if you think about it, townhomes turned on their side. So the wide part of it is facing a common area between all of the other units. and that's not somewhere where you park your car, but rather where you live your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where your front stoop is, and it's a green space, and it'll have a trail through it, and that kind of thing. So people could come in. There'll be studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom rentals, and
Awesome.
then the for sale units will be more in the 2 and 3 bedroom size.
Yeah, we definitely need more diversity in living styles. Basically, I would say, for someone like me who's a single guy working professional, it's just like that would be perfect for me.
Yeah.
I don't need a lot of space.
Yep.
Having a studio or a 1 bedroom apartment would be perfect, and especially if you can get it, in the addition of all these units is going to help bring prices down a little bit in by just basic economic theory, right? You have more availability for rental or purchase, which is going to mean, prices are going to have to come down because now there's more on the market.
Yep.
And I think it'd be a great place for younger individuals to start, or smaller families to get a start in town rather than having to live,
And then what's cool about it is as you grow as a family or your own interests, you could move within the community that you already know so well to maybe one of those other houses. And that's not always true of subdivisions the way we built them, in our country.
Yeah, we're all cookie cutter houses that are all exactly the same, so you're going to have to leave.
In this area, it's all single family. Over here, it's all, multifamily or bigger apartment buildings if you're in a big town or something. This mix allows you to have an investment in that community, we think, in a longer run. At least that's how it's played out in other parts of the country that we were looking at when we were exploring this idea. It's like, hey, how do we have financial goals. We talked about those. Those are real to us. We have social goals and environmental goals with this project as well. We use the biomimicry approach to help us deal with the environmental ones. On the social end of things, what we're talking about now very much fits with that. And so we drove around Montana a lot. What is it that we like about the places? Anaconda's got some cool examples.
Mm-hmm.
Butte was probably the best examples that we saw. And that's a place that's close to our heart as well, just from the combined history of Butte and Mounts and the tight history there. So what you saw in Butte is a lot of little communities that were, built up around the mine shafts, so that the workers coming out of the mine shafts are actually living pretty close to where they work, and they'd have a small grocery there and a restaurant and a laundry or whatever, and that's kind of how you can still see that in Butte. And we took some examples from that, and then we found some experts who have done this kind of development in the design and engineering context in other parts of the country, and we said, okay, how would you apply this in a rural town? Which is different than a Missoula or a Bozeman or a Billings or a Helena. We're quite small by comparison, but we're suffering from we're experiencing some of the same stresses that these bigger places experience from their growth. And, water quality and quantity, gobbling up of habitat and things like that. So
I think traffic is probably the biggest issue for a lot of people when I've mentioned this project. That tends to be their biggest concern. And the approach to building this community, I think, also addresses that. Not only of the reroute. I'll see if I can get a map of that proposed reroute, because the idea is to bring that intersection further north. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
so it's
right.
further down from that hill, so you have more visibility. Because it is a little hairy when you're
It is.
making a left turn there.
Yep.
Like I never make a left turn there if I don't have to.
Yeah.
Like I'll go down to Marcus and come around the corner.
Yep.
Just because, the influx of people and different driving styles, not everybody's going the speed limit, and it's an increase of speed there from 40 to 50 coming down that hill to 60 at the bottom of the hill. And so people are already going 60 almost by the time they get to that hill. And it does make it a little scary sometimes. And so the proposal of bringing that intersection further north, where it's on the flat, and then, but more importantly, it's that integration of community and work and the connection of the walking and biking paths as well, that's going to help reduce traffic as well, at least theoretically, that maybe some of the people that live in the community also work in some of the businesses that are around there, so they don't have to get in their car to go anywhere.
If you're a teacher at the high school or a student at the high school, it would take you longer to drive than to walk.
Yep.
And if you're on a bike, it's 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And, so that's one example. But a lot of these other employers, like where we're sitting here at the Exit Realty offices on 93, I mean, you're less than a mile from where that development would be. And it's got a pretty good Fairgrounds Road, non-motorized path along most of that road already, and this would help link that up, and it'd be pretty easy, especially with the wonderful weather we have for so much of the year, to not get in your car.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we think that that'll help reduce some of the traffic.
It reduces traffic, and it also inspires a little more healthy living as well. I mean, I've spoken to this before about my time living in Europe, and the ability that I had from where I lived and where I worked and where I could do my grocery shopping and so forth. I didn't need a car. I didn't own a car over there. I had a motorcycle, and that was for longer, trips, going to visit friends and stuff like that, and going around places. But my day-to-day life was basically either biking or walking everywhere, because it was such an easy connection. And it wasn't sharing a road either with large vehicles. It was on a distinct non-motorized vehicle path where you were separated. Sometimes you wouldn't even, see a street basically from where you're walking or biking. And so it gives you the ability to have that sense of safety while you're out and about, and also just get out and about. Like it helps you do it more, because you don't feel like you're, having to look over your shoulder of some guy flying down the road in his, F-350.
And if you're a parent and you're thinking about your kids, you're like, hey, stay on that trail.
Absolutely.
And you have a lot less stress about that. It's interesting when we talk to the designers about this issue, because what they did, and I wasn't familiar with this beforehand, is they would look at designing a community, and what they really wanted to see when it comes to a livable, walkable community is that within a 5-minute walk of any point in that community, you would have many of the amenities that you need for day-to-day life. And so, again, a grocery, but a local one, not a big one. Yeah. A small restaurant, a daycare maybe, or a cleaner, something like that in a community actually makes it, you're not hopping in the car to go get the eggs that you forgot.
Right.
It's right down the street, and then you're going to say hi to your neighbor on the way, or walk your dog, at the same time.
Yeah, it gives you more opportunity for social interaction with your neighbors and your community. And all in all, I think this is going to be a great project to have here.
It's a great piece of land. We've always been so fortunate because, look at us living in the valley. We've got the sapphires to the east, the sun coming over the mountains.
Yeah, there's a nice view.
It's gorgeous
well,
that way. And then looking west toward Blodgett, from this property is also spectacular. And there will be perimeter trails and open spaces. A picnic pavilion and playground for kids, that kind of thing. As with typical subdivisions, we'll have those kind of things as well.
Do you have off the top of your head how many miles of walking trail there are?
That's a good question. I don't know that. I know how many miles we have of border on the Bitterroot Stock Farm and how many neighbors we have there.
No worries.
And the changes that have, come.
But it's a fair amount. There's I'll
Yeah.
see. So, like I said, I'll try to I'll get pictures of those maps that you brought, and see if I can
I'm going to
post
come
them
up with
there.
that number.
Hey, it's a good one to have.
Yep.
But there's, you look at the map and there's a bunch.
Yeah.
There's a bunch, and so you could walk around that community, have a nice, I'm sure, good 30, 45-minute walk, walking around that community, and then it gives you the opportunity to meet all the people in your neighborhood, and you're also right at home at the same time.
And, you come across Freeze Lane, which is a quiet road most times, not always, with the high school hours. And then you're on the rail trail.
Yep.
And that's another mile where you're separated as well from the local roads. Or you go over to the canyons. It's not, it's not that hard to get there safely. So it's got good potential connectivity elements for the rest of town as well, we think.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep it short and sweet for this one, and why don't you go over again tomorrow
City
and then
Council.
and February 4th, just
Yeah,
to
you
let
bet.
everybody
City
know?
Council is their public hearing tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Bedford Building. They have a full agenda. You can find it online under City of Hamilton City Council Agenda 2025. And then you'll see the January 21st agenda. And that gives you instructions if you want to participate by Zoom, which is a viable option for the city. Or if you're in person, come on down and you can hear the staff present a summary of the project. They'll present a summary of the consideration that the Planning Board and the Zoning Commission gave to it, as well as their recommendation for approval. And then there'll be opportunity for public comment as well. Then they'll make a decision, ideally tomorrow night, and then they revisit that decision in 2 weeks, what they call their second reading, and that's a much less detailed discussion. Assuming things go this way, there's a number of ways it can go, but that's on February 4th at 7 p.m. at the normally scheduled City Council meeting as well.
Perfect. All right, Peter.
Thank you,
well,
Ryan.
thank you so much.
Good to see you as always. Glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's it, everybody. Thank you.